Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this video I'm going to explain how you can do a proper scientific research. Well, of course it's not completely scientific, but at least it's the basics. And at the end of this video you'll know how to make a work plan, like a research plan, and you will know how to make a proper method to get the results that you're interested in. So in this video we'll talk about the glue project, but you can use this knowledge for like any experiment that you want to do. We first have to actually make the glue before we can do any experiments with it. I found two recipes on the internet. The first one you can find right here. And the second one you can find right here. But making something, that's what we call synthesis. It's not actually doing research, we are making something. So when you're making these glues, you have to be very cautious because you have to work with fire. So there should always be an adult around if you make these glues. The tricky thing is, once you are heating the glue, it gets very thick very rapidly. Always make sure that you have an eye on the glue. But now the most important and the most fun part, I think. We want to perform an experiment and we want to draw conclusions. How can we do that? Well, there's a lot of possibilities to do this. For example, you can compare the strength of glue 1 and compare it with the strength of glue 2. You can also just pick one glue and alter the composition of the glue. So you can add more water, or you can add an extra compound, or you can remove some compounds and replace them with other compounds. So online I found that some people add vinegar to the second glue. Well, you can also examine that. You can also look at the temperature of the glue. So when you apply the glue to two pieces of paper, what is the best time to let the glue rest? Should you use it immediately, or maybe should you wait for like 10 minutes, maybe longer, maybe wait for a whole day, and then you can compare the results of those two. You can also alter the viscosity. That's like how thick the glue is. So you can make glue 1 and make it very thin, and then you can make glue 1 again, but then make it very thick. You can also look on the internet to find a new recipe and make a new recipe and compare it to, well, glue 1 or maybe glue 2. So the point of this part is that you have to make a good research question. Research always starts with the research question. And this can be, for example, what I just told you. What is the best time to let a glue rest before you apply it? Then after you have a good research question, you should always have it checked by a peer or by the teacher. Then you can make a hypothesis based on what you think. And why do you think that? So I think that the glue that rested for a day, that it has a better strength than the glue that you have applied immediately. So that's a hypothesis. It's actually what you expect to find. But then we get to the point that you actually have to measure something. So now we have a research question and we have a hypothesis. Then we get to the next part, and that is our research plan. Our material and methods. What materials are we going to use and what method are we going to use to find the results that we want to find. And this is a really important part. You should always document all the things that you use and how you use them in a very clear way. Because if you did an experiment, we want other people to be able to do the experiment in exactly the same way. And if they do it in exactly the same way, they should also get exactly the same results. How do you make a proper method? There are different methods to assess the strength of the glue. For example, you can look at this experiment in which you use a rubber band and you pull it and you measure the strength in centimeters. Then you can compare, for example, you use this method for glue 1 and you use this method for glue 2. Or what I just told you, you can use this method for glue 1 that you have immediately put on, or you can use this method for glue 1 but that has rested for a day, for example. You can also make a bridge. So you can see that here. And you can put a weight of which you know the mass, of course, because you want to know the maximum mass that it can hold before the glue snaps. If you use this method, you should be very careful that the paper is stuck between the books very well, because you don't want them to slip out of the books because you actually want to measure the strength of the glue. A third method can be like a hanging method. So you have two pieces of paper, glue them together, and then you place a paper clip somewhere and you attach weight to that. And then you can see what the maximum weight is that the glue can hold. If you use that method, you have to be careful with the weights that you use. Because if you first have a mass of 0 grams and then you apply a mass of 50 grams and then the glue breaks already, then you don't know what the actual maximum weight is that the glue can hold. It can be 10 grams, but it can also be 40 grams. So you see, it's not really easy to make a proper method. I also like you to be creative so you can come up with your own inventions. You can also compare different materials. So if we use glue 1 and we use it on pieces of paper, but what if we use glue 1 and we use it on pieces of cardboard? Would that hold better or worse? That's a research question. A hypothesis is, I think it would stick better to paper. So if you have found a good method to test the strength of the glue, then it's really important that you keep all things that can be variable, that you keep all of them constant except for one. And that's the thing that you want to examine. So if you want to examine the difference in strength between glue 1 and glue 2, so if you use a method, for example the hanging method, in both experiments you should use exactly the same size of paper and also exactly the same amount of glue that you apply. Or maybe the surface area. Because what if you use a small piece of paper in the first experiment with glue 1 and then you use a bigger piece of paper in the second experiment with glue 1? This difference in size of the paper results in the fact that you cannot be completely sure whether your results are different only because of the difference in glue, but they now can also be due to the difference in paper size. Or maybe you used more glue in the second experiment. Those are all factors that can influence your results. Then for this experiment we are going to do it in pairs. And this is also something that we should take into account, because what if we let researcher 1 perform the experiment with glue 1 and researcher 2 perform the experiment with glue 2? Then we did not only change the type of glue that we examined, we also have two different researchers. And two different researchers can also be a reason why your results are different. Maybe it's because person 1 did something wrong. Maybe he has different kinds of paper. Maybe his tap water is different. And those are all things that can influence the results. So what we are going to do, if you have the research question, which glue adheres better, glue 1 or glue 2, scientist 1 is going to perform the experiment both on glue 1 and glue 2. Scientist 2 is also going to perform the experiment on glue 1 and glue 2. In that way we have twice as many data, like information that we can collect. We would expect that both scientists obtain exactly the same results, or more or less the same results. What if scientist 2 has completely different results? Then that's something that we have to write about in our discussion. And we have to think of reasons why these results are so different. Also, if you perform an experiment one time, it's not really reliable data. Normally you should do it like 3 times or maybe 6 times even to get really reliable results. But because of the lack of time, we are not going to do that. We are only going to do the experiment once. Because if you do the experiment 3 times or 6 times and you get completely different results in each time you do the experiment, then there's a big possibility that something is wrong with the method that you're using. So you should adjust the method and try the experiment all over again. And that's what I thought very annoying thing of doing research. Most of the experiments, they fail, but they give you new knowledge to improve the experiments that you're doing and to go into maybe a different direction. Up until this point we have discussed making a research question and a consequent hypothesis. Then we got the second part, which was the materials and method. And then we get to the point of data collection. In this section we put our results. We do not draw any conclusions from these results yet. We only describe very objectively what are our results. So you can make a graph or maybe a table and compare the findings of researcher 1 with researcher 2, but only very objectively. Then we get to the last part, which is the discussion and also the conclusion. And now we have to say something about our results. Why is there a difference? Is there a difference? And how is that possible that there's this difference? Is the method that we have used, is that completely correct? Can we make any adjustments for future research? This is very important, that you always propose adjustments to the method for future research. So in the future I would do this differently. You also have to draw a conclusion, and then you have to reflect on your hypothesis. If you expected glue 1 to have more strength than glue 2, and this is not the case, then you have to reflect on that. So your conclusion is the hypothesis was false, was not true. And again, remember, that's completely okay, because in scientific research this happens a lot of times, and it's no problem at all, because your experiment did not fail. You found new knowledge in order to change the experiment and eventually find the right results. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. I hope this was a little bit clear. If there are any questions, you can always just send me a text in Teams, send me an email, and I will clarify things for you. Now, the last thing that I want to say is I wish you all best of luck with this experiment, and you